Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sturt Street in the beautiful city of Ballarat as we come together to celebrate the 5-year anniversary marking the unveiling of the George Divine Treloar memorial statue. The statue that honours the humanitarian efforts and advocacy for the Pontic Greek refugees of Asia Minor at the end of World War I by George Divine. My name is Penny Tombanopoulos and I'm the public liaison representative of Mνημείου Oceania, and I will be your MC for this morning's proceedings. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Before we move on, I would like to have a minute of silence in honour of all the fallen servicemen and women. Thank you. Before I go into my little formal speech here, I'd just really like to say it's lovely to see so many new faces here today. Yes, I don't think I've ever seen you guys here before, so welcome. And I'd just like to welcome everyone back that continues to come every year to support this event, which is fantastic. Today we find ourselves here again in the beautiful city of Ballarat, and whilst we will never forget the hardships and tragedies of the past, we gather to celebrate the milestone 5th year and honour the memory of George Divine Treloar, his humanitarian efforts and achievements with his glorious statue that was erected 5 years ago on Sunday the 8th of September 2019. I'd like to acknowledge some people who are with us here today. The Consul General of Greece in Australia, Mr. Emmanuel Kakabelakis, representing the city of Ballarat, the Mayor, Mr. Des Hutton, former Mayor, current Central Board Councillor and Honorary Member of Mνημείου Oceania, Miss Samantha McIntosh, Miss Eleanor Lacey, granddaughter of George Divine Treloar, representative of the Greek community of Ballarat, Mr. Andreas Litras, President of the Ballarat RSL, Mr. Frank Nuccio, I apologise if I mispronounced him, Acting Principal of St. Patrick's College Ballarat, Mr. John Richards, President of Mνημείου Oceania and Chair of the George Divine Treloar Memorial Committee, Mrs. Lita Athanasiadis, President of the Central Pontian Association of Melbourne and Victoria, Mr. Conte Brailidis, Representative of the Pontian Federation of Australia, Mr. Yanni Bilalidis, President of the Intercommunities and Parishes Council of Victoria, Mr. Tony Tudalakis, President of the Pan-Thracian Association, Mr. Christo Vlasikakis, Secretary of the Society of Kalamata, 23rd of March, Ms. Katie Karabatsos, Representative of the Educational Institution Hellenism of Anatolia from the Aegean Sea to Pondos, Ms. Yota Stavridou. President of the Hellenic Writers Association, Mrs. Romasiakou, Mr. Sotiris Sotirio and members of the Pegasus Dance Academy, and representatives of the Elderly Citizens Group Adaimes of Kyrιακή, Mr. Andonis Savronidis, Mr. Sava Mikhailidis, and Sofia Mavropoulos. There are many facets to this journey and to the story of George Divine Treloar, and even to the story of little Lemono, the young girl who is seated on a bundle of bedding and a sack of grain next to George, vulnerable and hoping for a better future. I won't say much today as we have a number of guest speakers, but what I would say is this. An idea is like a virus, resilient and highly contagious, and even the smallest seed of an idea can grow. Plant that seed in your mind, watch that seed grow, and continue to water it with belief. Each time we plant a seed, we become ancestors for the generations to come. I'd like first to invite this morning on behalf of the City of Ballarat, the Mayor of the Ballarat, my apologies, Mr. Des Hudson.
Welcome to everybody who has joined us today on this very special occasion as we gather to again recognise and pay tribute to George Divine Treloar. It is great to be able to welcome Mr. Emmanuel Kabakalakakis, and I think I absolutely murdered that pronunciation. My extreme apologies, Mr. Consulate General of Greece, who is rapidly coming towards the end of your 4-year term that finishes in January, and I hope it's been a really special time, not only in Australia but those visits to Ballarat that you've been able to do. So a very warm welcome. To my fellow councillor, Councillor Samantha McIntosh, who is a very proud member of the George Divine Treloar Memorial Association, and for all your hard work, Sam, and to all of the other dignitaries that Penny has paid tribute to and acknowledged this morning. You are all very special and part of this fantastic journey. Could I acknowledge that we are meeting on the grounds of the Wadawurrung and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. It was really a proud day for me back on the 8th of October 2016, where we formally launched the fundraising campaign for the George Divine Treloar statue in the trench room in the city of Ballarat. And it was great that the city of Ballarat was able to pledge $50,000 from our public arts fund to be able to kick off the fundraising efforts. And so from that day we stand here today to celebrate not just a remarkable statue, but the legacy of a very extraordinary person, Ballarat's own George Divine Treloar. And 5 years after the statue was first unveiled, we gather again to honour Treloar's incredible humanitarian work following World War I. As a former soldier and a representative of the League of Nations High Commissariat for Refugees, he dedicated his life to resettling thousands of Pontian Greek refugees. This statue is a very powerful reminder of his compassion, courage and selflessness. And if we think about our world today and battles of conflict on the other side of the world, where if there was more of that humanitarian compassion and empathy, whether we could turn around and have a better world today. This statue is also a credit to the Mirimino Pontian Association of Melbourne, the Victorian Pontiaci Estia and the George Treloar Memorial Committee that worked tirelessly to establish it, and we are proud that it stands along many of our other significant statues right throughout Sturt Street. And importantly, the statue is the first in the Sturt Street Garden Precinct which is created by a female artist, that of Liz Johnson. And interesting how many of us naturally think when we talk about the sculptor, presume that it's likely to be a male. And for this to be the very first installation of a female artist who has done an incredibly remarkable and amazing job in what is presented before us today. This statue connects us to our history and to the values of empathy and kindness that George Treloar embodied throughout his entire life. It is not only a tribute to his life, but a symbol of our shared humanity and the enduring importance of standing up for those in need everywhere. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you very much, Penny. Tireless Penny. Penny has been in this so-called story since 9 years ago. We started talking about Treloar. I'm not going to take up too much time I'm simply going to say hello to everyone and welcome. I'm not going to name you all because Penny's done that already. So there's going to be a few people speaking. Therefore, I'm just going to say have a wonderful day today. Thank you very much to everyone that's made their way up from Melbourne. And you, beautiful young people in your costumes, welcome once again. They've been here every year, and we will see them a little bit later in performing as well, which will be great. And that's all I need to say. My friend Samantha McIntosh, I will say once again, because we unveiled the statue, Des begun, Samantha carried on, etc., etc. And I'm very proud to have with us Mr. Pepper. Here we go, I'm going to do this, think of it like this. Des, so there you go. Rectified the name, the surname. And thank you once again to all of you. I'll just pass this on to the next speaker because there are a few and we don't want to hold you up too long. Thank you.
Honourable Mayor, Mr. Des Hudson, dear Councillor, former Mayor, Ms. McIntosh, the representatives of the RSL of St. Patrick's College, Ms. Eleanor Lacey, dear friends, presidents of our Pontic and Greek associations, ladies and gentlemen. As the Consul General of Greece, it is a great honor and a privilege to stand before you today in this historic, I believe, city of Ballarat to commemorate the extraordinary life and legacy of George Divine Treloar. We gather today before this amazing statue not only to honor the man, but to reflect on the profound impact that George Divine Treloar made on the lives of countless individuals, especially the refugees of Pontus. George Treloar became a shining example of humanitarianism during one of the darkest chapters of our history, the Pontic Greek genocide. As we remember his efforts, it is essential to acknowledge the plight of the Pontic Greek refugees who faced unimaginable suffering and loss during that tumultuous period. Treloar's noble heart was moved by the suffering of Pontic Greeks who were fleeing violence, persecution and displacement. He recognized their plight and took it upon himself to advocate for their rights and their welfare. His tireless efforts contributed significantly to the resettlement and integration of those refugees into Greek society, offering them not just a safe haven, but also a chance to rebuild their lives. The legacy of George Divine Treloar is rooted in compassion and empathy. He exemplified the values of our Greek heritage, which teach us to stand by those in need and to extend our hand in support. He understood that the strength of a community lies in its ability to care for its most vulnerable members. His actions serve as a powerful reminder of what it means to be human, especially in times of crisis. As we gather here today, let us pay tribute not only to George Treloar, but also the countless lives that he touched. This statue serves as a lasting memorial to his dedication and a reminder of the resilience of the Pontic Greek spirit. In conclusion, let's remember George Divine Treloar not just as a historical figure, but as a symbol of hope and humanity. Let's carry forward his legacy of compassion and commitment to helping those in need, particularly refugees who have sought solace and belonging in this great nation. Thank you for joining us on this momentous occasion. It is our duty to continue to honor the values that George held dear and strive to make a difference in the lives of others. Allow me to add a few words in Greek for my compatriots of the text. Να συγχαρώ πραγματικά και τη Μέριμνα και την Κυριακή Εστία και όλους τους συμπατριώτες μας που βοήθησαν σε αυτό το εγχείρημα. Πραγματικά, όχι μόνο οι Πόντιοι, όλοι οι Έλληνες προσφέρουμε πολλά σε αυτόν τον μεγάλο άνδρα, αλλά είναι και μια υπενθύμηση για τους Έλληνες στην Αυστραλία που έφυγαν από πάρα πολύ δύσκολες συνθήκες και βρήκαν εδώ φιλοξενία, την οποία όμως φιλοξενία καθημερινά αποδεικνύουν ότι την αξίζουν με τη σκληρή δουλειά και την προκοπή τους σε αυτή την κοινωνία. Είμαστε περήφανοι για εσάς και σας ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thanks very much, Penny. Let's to the Consul General, to our Mayor, those representatives from St Patrick's College whom have also acknowledged George Divine Treloar with a posthumous award, to everyone that comes each year, to the beautiful dancers that are here behind us, and to some of our locals as well that have started attending this very important ceremony. I thank you all. It's a great honour to be part of this committee. I recall that day that Des reflected on back in 2016, and I recall the significant work of Litza, Penny and the team of people, of John Salpentitis, this is his wife's orchid that he drove up from Melbourne to leave in my garden so that each year at this particular ceremony we pop the orchid in Lamona's cup. To the people that have remembered those children and their stories, to Litza for sharing those stories with us at the last ceremony. It's just such a beautiful thing that we can all be part of an important piece of Ballarat's history and of your history that's deeper than ours. What we do know is we know that the Treloar Cafe still is remembered down in the Bridge Street area to this day. We know that George's history, his parents here in Ballarat and the students from St Patrick's College are all inspired by the great work that he did internationally, not just here in Ballarat. So it's an absolute spoil, it's an absolute honour, it's an absolute privilege that we all come here today standing in front of Liz Johnson's most amazing piece of public art. Ballarat is very well known as the City of Statues, and this statue in particular says so much more. It has added so much to our streetscape. I remember those significant conversations, Litza, about which block, which block we were going to be standing in, and it moved, year after year. But eventually, this is where George and Lamona stand with great pride and with great support from our community. We have an intercultural cities agreement. We were the first city in our country to sign that agreement. There is so much more work that we need to do to make sure that our whole community embraces with much greater heart the really important stories that are absolutely represented here with George and Lamona. I thank you all for coming along.
Yes, so welcome distinguished guests, welcome everyone. We're here to remember and commemorate the life of Major George Divine Treloar. Major Treloar was born here in Ballarat in 1884 and attended St Patrick's College here. He worked at a number of jobs, bank clerk, jackaroo, actor, and as a major in the British Coldstream Guards during World War I. He is best remembered though for his role as a commissioner for the refugees of the League of Nations, which was the predecessor of the current United Nations. He did this in northern Greece in 1922. George and his group of assistants helped over 100,000 Christian refugees. From another source when I was doing the research at over 108, so quite a number of people, who had arrived in northern Greece fleeing their homes in Asia Minor. George and his group provided accommodation, food, work and medical care to help the refugees establish themselves in northern Greece. For his work, George was awarded the highest Greek honour, the Order of the Redeemer, Gold Cross. Closer? Okay. Many of the descendants of these Greek refugees would immigrate to Australia after World War II. The statue that has been erected in George's hometown of Ballarat features George and a young refugee girl who has been named Lamona. It is my pleasure and honour to be here today with the descendants of those refugees that George helped so many years ago before, and to join you in celebrating his work and its impact on the Greek community here in Ballarat. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As mentioned, my name is John Richards and I am an Assistant Principal at St Patrick's College, Ballarat. I am indeed honoured to be standing here today to remember the work of the great George Divine Treloar. George is an old collegian of our great school, and he embodies many of the values that we aim to instil in our boys. Honour, respect, a sense of empathy and hopefulness, and also a deep value of human life. George's life and his efforts have had very little publicity until recently. His story is largely unknown outside of the Pontian Greek community, and I, like you, think that his story is one of significance and one that should be told and revered. According to Adriana Simus, the Greek Herald, humanitarian, hero and saviour are three words which perfectly describe Major George Divine Treloar. A local Ballarat boy, George was born on the 23rd of April 1884, son of Thomas Reed Treloar, chemist, and his wife Jane, both born here in Victoria. And of course he was educated at St Patrick's College, which I hope stood him in good stead later life. He worked as a bank clerk and a jackaroo before he went and took up farming in Western Australia. While travelling by ship to Adelaide, he was recruited by actor manager Julius Knight, and he toured Australia with his troupe playing romantic dramas. Oscar Ashe then took Treloar to South Africa and England, where he was acting when war broke out in 1914. Having previously served at Ballarat as a lieutenant in the 3rd Victorian Rifles, George immediately volunteered, although he was rejected because of defective eyesight. He wangled his way into the 20th Middlesex Artists Rifle Volunteers, and in 1915, as a private, he secured a transfer to the Coldstream Guards. He served in France, was commissioned and ultimately promoted to Major, second in command of the 3rd Battalion. He was buried twice by shell bursts on the Somme and almost bullet-riddled at Ypres. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Order and ultimately the Military Cross. Following the Great War, George joined the fight against Bolshevism in Russia, fighting the pro-Tsarist White Russian forces, and later he took on a role with the newly formed League of Nations as a Commissioner for Refugees. And as we've heard, George's work in saving 100,000 Greek people from the Pontus region is the stuff of legend. It was George's persistence, determination and sense of what is right to organise food, shelter, medical care and resettlement for these refugees. And this is the big thing, I think. This happened often in the face of bureaucratic opposition or, worst of all, indifference. At St Patrick's, we hold the story of George Divine Treloar as an example to our boys, an example of what is possible if you have sound values and an orientation towards helping others. Well done, George, a fine Australian, an esteemed old collegian of St Patrick's. We salute you. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Constable. For those that don't know me, I'm the president of the Central Pontian Association, Kyrιακή in Greek. It was the year 2011 when a very excited John Salpatiris came to see us with a story that he had heard about an Australian Army major from Ballarat in 1922 that went out of his way to rescue Greek refugees from Pontus on the Minor Asia region and help resettle them in Greece. We asked Jim Clavin to conduct some research into this man, and Jim indeed confirmed that this was correct. We instantly knew that we needed to do something big, something great, to honour this great man. Thus the George Divine Treloar Committee was founded. Mnimeu Pondion Kyrion, headed by Litsa Athanasiadis, quickly took charge. Together with the backing of Kyrιακή and the George Divine Treloar Committee, we set out to formally recognise, honour and educate the greater public, the achievements of this great man. And what better way to do this than having a permanent memorial in his hometown of Ballarat. After a 4-year quest, with many ups and downs, funding, planning, the minimal formalities which we finally overcome. With much pride, in honour of our ancestors, this great monument in his honour in his hometown of Ballarat became a reality. This year is a 5-year milestone. We value all the support and thank all the sponsors and everyone involved in all aspects of this tremendous project. The assistance of George Divine Treloar and indeed the compassionate people of Ballarat played an enormous role in settling the homeless and displaced that arrived as refugees in Greece after the population exchange in 1923, with a supply of grain, preserved foodstuffs and clothing. It means a lot to us. I myself am also a descendant of the Greeks of Pontus. Our people, our culture, and the surviving generations are eternally grateful. Thank you.
Concluding our speeches this morning and speaking on behalf of the remaining family members of George Divine Treloar, I'd like to invite Mrs. Eleanor Lacey, granddaughter of George Divine Treloar.
Marinera. Today, I would like to relate the story of how we travelled to Thrylório and made contact with the descendants of the refugees helped by Colonel Treloar. In 1995, when I was in Istanbul, I went into the Cisterna Basilica, a place that Grandpa had told me about many, many times, and the music playing was Nessun Dorma, None Shall Sleep, one of his very, very favourite songs. And it was like he was there with me. And perhaps I should have paid more attention, because in 2004, John Treloar drove his wife Sally to a psychic she had never met and used before. John thought it was all nonsense. Sally said, she gave him strict instructions: don't interrupt, get behind me so I can't see you, and don't talk or snigger. The psychic started with information about Sally's mother, and she was impressed by his accuracy. But then he said, now there's a gentleman, a military man, and he wants to talk to him. And Sally was a bit put out and said, I'm paying and I want to hear things about me and my family, not about John. He doesn't even believe in spiritualism or magic. Anyway, the psychic persisted and said, he doesn't want to talk to you, he wants to talk to him. He said the military man wanted John to know that in the future they would be together again, that John would go back to the place where he was born, that he, the military man, would walk every step of the way with John, and that he loved both of his sons. John went, well, that would not ever have to happen. And the psychic said, no, the military man says he will provide everything. John was bemused. John and Sally told David and Helen what had occurred, and their response was disbelief. In fact, all of us thought it was implausible that nothing would ever happen. 3 years later, David was sent an email from a distant relative, Trent Nyman, one of the Nyman family in Bendigo. Trent had put his whole family tree on the internet, and now someone was looking for the sons of Treloar. He forwarded the email to David. David glanced at it, saw slightly unusual English and thought, oh, it's probably scam, and put it in the bin. He retrieved it 2 or 3 days later and actually read it. Not only were they looking for the sons of Treloar, but they were offering to pay for their fares to Thrylório and their accommodation. David promptly contacted the sender of the email, Professor Manolis Sergis from the Democritus University near Pomatini. Professor Sergis explained that he was a sociologist with expertise in folklore. One of his research projects was a history and folklore of Thrylório and the whole culture of the Pontians inhabitants, and confirmed that the people in Thrylório did want to meet George's sons. David called John and said, you better sit down. People in Greece, in a village named after father, wants us to go and meet them. They're offering to pay for their travel and accommodation. Are you interested? John immediately said, yes. And in direct contradiction to his previous belief said, Told you so, the psychic was right. David's wife Helen said, we all must go. John was 80 and had a really, really dodgy knee and other medical problems, and he was ready to go in a flash. Later, he described the trip to Thrylório and his trip back to his childhood home, Constantinople, as the best time in his life. He lived until he was 95. I thought they'd missed out my mum, George's daughter Elizabeth, that they should be asking for the children of Treloar, and insisted on going to represent her. I now know that they knew she was dead, as it said so in the Nyman family tree, but I'm pleased that I went, and like John, I had a wonderful time. The psychic's military man had fulfilled his promises. John was born in Thessaloniki, and we passed through that city on the way to Thrylorio. And there was a way for John to travel that didn't include winning lotto. Many of the people in Thrylorio had forgotten about why their village's name had an interesting name and who had helped them. But there were some, like Chrissa Mavrodor's grandmother, who had not forgotten. And she said, my family, my village bears the name of an English engineer, Mr. Treloar. He made the plan for the village. But that's not quite right, as George's Russian second-in-command, Colonel Crichton, did that. Thrylorio looks like a small Australian town with a giant square in the middle. One of the first questions that I asked when we got to Thrylorio was why George had never come back to see them. And the answer was that after he returned to Australia in 1927, he was never rich enough to consider going back. While we walked through Thrylorio, a very old lady, in Greek, because not knowing that I could understand, said in a cross voice, who are these people? And Chrissa responded, they're the sons of Treloar. And she burst into tears. It was enormously moving. Other elderly folks said they remember he had straps around his leg, like that, there. Probably putties or spats from his army uniform. And they used to run behind him and try and touch him, and he'd shoo them away. Thrylorio and its people, in fact all of the people George helped, have not been forgotten. I've known about all of you for 61 years, ever since I went to live with George and Kathleen when I was 10. He had lots and lots and lots of stories to tell. Didn't appreciate them then. I brought with me today a lovely shepherd's staff made by Gianardis Paridis, a delightful old Pontian man who was a baby when he arrived in Thrylorio, so he didn't know and remember George, but he made one and gave it to me when I went to Thrylorio. And then another surprise. All of you appeared. Thank you to the lovely John Sampanides for persisting and asking you to find out about George, and thus making him remembered here in his native land. I'm sorry to hear that John cannot be here today. Many thanks to Litza and Penny and everybody, including the city of Ballarat, for funding this magnificent memorial. In David's book, written with Penny Office Diomedes, hopefully coming soon, George is described as having skills including being a skilled rabbit trapper, a kangaroo hunter, a blacksmith, a farrier, a carpenter, a wheelwright, a wagon breeder, a builder, a horseman, rifleman, bush cook, I never ever saw him cooking, shepherd, and a farmer. Add to that an avid reader, a swordsman, when he was acting, they said he was the best swordsman in Australia, an actor, a soldier, a camp commandant, a commissioner for a League of Nations, bookbinder, drafter of buildings. The house that I lived on our farm was designed by him, a patron of hockey and cricket companies, clubs, not companies, a cabinet maker, and a pioneer in talkback radio. He didn't seem to know how to stop them. He was tough and resilient, and sometimes a tinsy-wincy bit scary. He lived to the age of 96 and never ever tired of being a student of the world. I would like to quote a line from one of Shakespeare's poems, one that George quoted often. And one man in his time plays many parts. George certainly did. If he was here today, he would be both honoured and more than a little delighted that he is now recognised in Australia. But I think what would make his heart sing is us, strong, resilient survivors. George's 29 living descendants, from his 88-year-old son to his 2-year-old great-great-grandchild, coming here every year to remember him. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
First laying a wreath, the Mayor of the City of Ballarat, Mr. Des Hudson. Representative of the Great Community of Ballarat. Acting Assistant Principal. President of the Penetration Association, Mr. Vosibakis. ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of formal proceedings for today. On behalf of Merimna Pondion Kirion, Oceania, and the George Divine Treloar Memorial Committee, I'd like to thank the staff of Ballarat for assisting us each year with this event, and Jason Howes from SLC Sound and Lighting Concepts for his assistance in the sound. Before everyone departs today, I'd like to gather everyone in front of the statue here for one photo. Thank you very much.